Jake Morrison had been cleaning floors at the Galactic Archaeological Institute for 3 years now. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid the bills and gave him a front-row seat to the most fascinating alien artifacts in known space. Not that he understood any of it. To Jake, a priceless Andromedan statue was just another dust collector, and the famous crystalline archives were just really expensive shells that needed weekly polishing. Station Kepler 442 orbited a blue giant star, housing the galaxy's most impressive collection of xenoarchaeological treasures. Researchers from 40 different species worked here, studying the remnants of civilizations that had risen and fallen long before humanity ever looked up at the stars. Jake kept their labs clean, emptied their trash, and occasionally listened to their excited chatter about discoveries he couldn't begin to comprehend. Tonight's shift was running late. Jake pushed his cleaning cart down the sterile white corridors of Level 7, the high-security wing. His magnetic boots clicked softly against the metal floor. Most of the researchers had gone home hours ago, leaving only the night security and the ever-present hum of environmental systems. He liked the quiet. It gave him time to think, to listen to music, to just exist without anyone demanding anything from him. The artifact chamber at the end of the hall was his last stop. Inside sat the Praetorian Keystone, a crystalline object about the size of a basketball that seemed to shift colors when you weren't looking directly at it. The Institute had acquired it 6 months ago from a deep space mining operation, paying a fortune for what everyone believed was the key to unlocking Velora imperial vaults scattered across the galaxy. The Velora Empire had vanished 3,000 years ago, leaving behind ruins, legends, and enough mystery to fuel entire academic careers. They'd been powerful, possibly the most advanced civilization the galaxy had ever seen. Then one day, they were simply gone. No war, no plague, no explanation. Just empty cities and sealed vaults that nobody could open. Jake swiped his ID card and the chamber door hissed open. Temperature-controlled air washed over him, kept at exactly 18 degrees to preserve the artifact. He'd cleaned this room 100 times, always careful never to touch anything except the floors and the transparent walls of the display case. The keystone sat on its pedestal in the center, lit from below by soft blue lights, looking simultaneously ancient and brand new. He started with the corners, running his electrostatic mop along the edges where dust always seemed to accumulate despite the filtration systems. Dr. Emily Grant, the Institute director, had given him a 20-minute lecture once about how even microscopic dust particles could potentially contaminate priceless artifacts. Jake had nodded politely and made sure to do his job right. He needed this gig. The cart's wheel caught on something as he circled the display pedestal. Jake pulled harder, and the cart lurched forward, slamming into the pedestal base with a dull thud that made his heart stop. The keystone rocked dangerously on its mount. Without thinking, Jake lunged forward and grabbed it with both hands to keep it from falling. The world exploded into light. Golden energy erupted from the keystone, spreading up Jake's arms and enveloping his entire body. He tried to let go but couldn't. His hands were locked in place, fingers wrapped around smooth crystal that suddenly felt warm, almost alive. The light intensified until he had to squeeze his eyes shut, but even through closed eyelids he could see intricate patterns forming, geometric shapes that twisted through dimensions his brain wasn't designed to process. Then came the sound. A deep thrumming that he felt in his chest more than heard with his ears. It resonated through the floor, the walls, the very air itself. Alarm klaxons started screaming. Red emergency lights began flashing. Somewhere, multiple security protocols were being automatically triggered. Jake's eyes snapped open and he saw something impossible. Holographic displays had materialized around him, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. They showed star charts, navigation coordinates, technical readouts in a language he'd never seen before. Except he could read it. Somehow, impossibly, the alien script made perfect sense. His brain translated it automatically, like reading English, like he'd known this language his entire life. The chamber door burst open. Security guards in combat armor poured in, weapons drawn. Behind them came Dr. Grant, her normally composed face showing raw shock. She was staring at Jake like he'd grown a second head. More people crowded into the doorway. Researchers, technicians, even the night shift supervisor who Jake had never seen move faster than a casual stroll. "Step away from the artifact," the lead security guard commanded, his weapon trained on Jake's chest. "I'm trying," Jake gasped. His hand still wouldn't release the keystone. The golden light pulsed in waves, synchronized with his heartbeat. "I can't let go." Dr. Grant pushed past the guards, her scientific curiosity apparently overriding her sense of self-preservation. She pulled out a handheld scanner and aimed it at Jake, at the keystone, at the space where his hands met the crystal. Her eyes widened as she read the results. She ran the scan again, shook the device, checked the calibration, then scanned a third time. "That's impossible," she whispered. "What's impossible?" Jake managed to ask through gritted teeth. The energy flowing through him felt like touching a live wire, but it didn't hurt. It was just overwhelming, too much sensation, too much information flooding into his brain all at once. "You're showing velora genetic markers," Dr. Grant said, her voice hollow with disbelief. "Specific bloodline identifiers that we've been searching for across 300 species for the last 2 centuries. The keystone is recognizing you as Imperial family. It's registering you as heir to the velora throne." The golden light suddenly vanished, sucked back into the keystone so fast that Jake stumbled backward. The holographic displays disappeared. The thrumming stopped. For a moment, the only sound was the alarm klaxon still echoing through the station. Jake looked down at his hands, then at the keystone, then at the crowd of shocked faces staring at him. A human janitor. From Earth. A planet that had barely achieved interstellar travel 200 years ago, long after the velora had vanished into legend. "There must be some mistake," Jake said weakly. Dr. Grant's expression shifted from shock to something more calculating, almost fearful. "According to Imperial law, still recognized by 12 major galactic governments and 47 minor ones, whoever the Praetorian Keystone accepts becomes legal heir to all velora territories, technologies, and authorities." "I'm a janitor," Jake protested. "Not anymore," Dr. Grant replied. "As of this moment, you're the most legally powerful being in known space. And probably the most endangered." Jake woke up in a room that wasn't his. The bed was too comfortable, the sheets too expensive, and instead of his cramped studio apartment's cracked ceiling, he stared up at an ornate domed viewport showing the swirling colors of the nebula outside. For a blissful moment, he thought maybe last night had been a weird dream brought on by bad cafeteria food. Then the door chimed and 6 Torvan honor guards marched in without waiting for permission. They were tall, these Torvans, with metallic skin that shifted between silver and gold depending on the light. Their species claimed direct descent from velora colonies, and they took that heritage seriously. Too seriously, in Jake's opinion. They moved with military precision, arranging themselves in formation around his bed like he was some kind of precious cargo. "Imperial Scion," the lead guard said, bowing so low his forehead nearly touched his knees. "We are honored to escort you to the morning briefing." "I'm not an Imperial anything," Jake muttered, throwing off the covers. He was still wearing his janitor uniform from last night, complete with the coffee stain on his sleeve. "I'm just a guy who touched something he wasn't supposed to touch." The guards exchanged uncomfortable glances. The lead one straightened up, his expression carefully neutral. "With respect, Scion, the keystone does not make errors. It has bonded to your genetic signature. The law is clear." Jake learned very quickly that arguing with Torvan honor guards was like arguing with walls. Walls that had weapons and an unshakable belief in ancient protocol. They escorted him through corridors he'd only ever cleaned, past researchers who stopped and stared, some bowing, others looking like they wanted to dissect him on the spot. He caught whispers as he passed. "A human? Impossible. The scans must be wrong. Do you know what this means for our claims?" The briefing room was packed. Dr. Emily Grant stood at the head of a massive conference table, surrounded by holographic displays showing legal documents, genetic charts, and what looked like property maps of half the galaxy. She looked like she hadn't slept. Neither had anyone else in the room, judging by the empty coffee containers and exhausted faces. "Sit," she said to Jake, gesturing to the chair at the head of the table. The chair that was clearly meant for someone important. Someone who wasn't him. Jake Saturday. The Torvan guards took positions behind him, standing at attention like statues. Dr. Grant activated a hologram that showed a 3-dimensional map of known space. Dozens of systems were highlighted in gold. "These are confirmed velora territories. Under Imperial law, all of them now fall under your authority. That's approximately 800 billion sentient beings across 42 star systems." Jake's mouth went dry. "You're joking." "I wish I was." Dr. Grant zoomed in on one system. This is the Kresh Dominion's capital world. 90% of their territory was originally velora holdings. They've built their entire civilization on those worlds for the last 2,000 years. Legally, you could claim it all back. "I don't want it," Jake said immediately. "That's not the point. They don't know that. To them, you're an existential threat." She pulled up another display showing military vessels. The Kresh mobilized 3 battle fleets 6 hours after word got out. They're not coming here, not yet, but they're ready. A Torvan advisor spoke up from the side of the room. The Ascendancy Council has issued a formal summons. They require the Scion to present himself before the High Court to demonstrate proper lineage and submit to their guidance as stewards of Velcora legacy. Guidance meaning control, Dr. Grant translated. They want to use you to legitimize their own claims to power. Jake rubbed his face with both hands. This was insane. 24 hours ago his biggest problem was whether he could afford to fix his broken heater. Now he apparently owned planets and had alien governments either threatening him or trying to control him. What about the Synthesis Collective? Someone asked from across the table. Dr. Grant's expression darkened. They've classified him as a priority research subject. 3 of their science vessels are en route. They want to understand how a human carries Velcora markers when humanity wasn't even spacefaring during the Imperial era. So they want to study me like a lab rat, Jake said flatly. Essentially, yes. A younger researcher, a human woman Jake vaguely recognized from level 3, raised her hand hesitantly. What about the keystone itself? It's not just symbolic, right? I mean, it responded to him. What else can it do? Dr. Grant nodded at her. Good question, Rachel. That's actually why I need Jake to come with me to Lab 4 after this meeting. The keystone is still bonded to him. We need to understand what that means. The meeting dragged on for another 2 hours. Jake learned he'd been assigned a warship he didn't know how to fly. He had diplomatic immunity in systems he'd never heard of. Various corporations wanted to hire him as a spokesman. 3 different religious groups had declared him either a messiah or a heretic, he wasn't clear which. And there had already been 2 assassination attempts that security had stopped before they got anywhere near him. 2 assassination attempts. Before breakfast. When they finally let him leave, Dr. Grant pulled him aside in the hallway. The Torvan guards maintained their positions a respectful distance away, close enough to intervene but far enough to give the illusion of privacy. I know this is overwhelming, she said quietly. Trust me, it's overwhelming for all of us. But we need to figure out what the keystone actually does. Because if it's just a glorified ID badge, that's one thing. But if it's what the legends say it is, if it actually opens the Velcora vaults. Then what? Jake asked. Then you're sitting on technology that could revolutionize the galaxy. Or destroy it. Medical advances that could cure diseases we've been fighting for centuries. Weapons that could crack planets. Energy systems that would make fossil fuels and fusion look like rubbing sticks together. The Velcora were thousands of years ahead of us. Maybe tens of thousands. And they locked it all away. Jake followed her to Lab 4, where the keystone sat in a new containment field, glowing softly. When he entered the room, it brightened, pulsing like it recognized him. Rachel, the young researcher, was already there, surrounded by scanning equipment and looking like a kid on Christmas morning. Try touching it again, Dr. Grant suggested. Jake reached out slowly. The moment his fingers made contact, the holographic displays returned. But this time he understood what he was looking at. Navigation data. Vault locations. Access codes written in that ancient language his brain now read as easily as English. The keystone wasn't just recognizing him. It was teaching him, uploading information directly into his mind. I can see them, he whispered. The vaults. There are dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Scattered across the galaxy. Rachel was frantically recording everything, her scanners going wild. The energy signature is off the charts. It's like the keystone is using his neural patterns as a processing interface. Can you open them? Dr. Grant asked. The vaults, I mean. Can you access them remotely? Jake concentrated, trying to understand the flood of information. No. I have to be there physically. Each vault requires direct contact with the keystone and verification of bloodline markers. It's a security system. A really, really good security system. Dr. Grant and Rachel exchanged a look. What? Jake asked, pulling his hand away. The displays faded but didn't disappear completely this time. They lingered at the edge of his vision, like after images. If you have to visit each vault personally, Dr. Grant said carefully, then we need to decide which one to go to first. Because the moment we leave this station, every major power in the galaxy is going to be watching. And some of them won't be content to just watch. Jake looked at the keystone, at the artifact that had turned his life upside down in the span of a single touch. He thought about the vaults, about technology that could change everything, about the responsibility he'd never asked for but couldn't escape. Then I guess we better figure out which vault is worth dying for, he said. The ship they gave Jake wasn't just a ship. It was a flying fortress called the Horizon's Edge, complete with shields that could withstand a direct nuclear blast and engines that could fold space in ways that made his head hurt just thinking about. Rachel had spent the entire first day of their journey trying to explain the propulsion system to him. Jake had nodded along, understanding maybe one word in 10. The shattered reach loomed ahead of them on the view screen, a graveyard of dead stars that looked exactly as welcoming as its name suggested. Twisted fragments of planets drifted through the darkness, debris from some ancient cataclysm that had torn entire solar systems apart. Navigation hazards appeared on every scanner, and the gravitational fields were so unpredictable that most ships avoided the region entirely. Are you absolutely sure the vault is in there? Dr. Grant asked, studying the sensor readings with obvious concern. She'd been on edge since they left station Kepler 442 3 days ago, jumping at every anomaly, every unidentified contact. 2 Kresh warships had shadowed them for the first day before breaking off. The Synthesis Collective had sent what they claimed was a diplomatic envoy. Dr. Grant had refused to let them dock. Jake held the keystone in his lap, feeling its warmth through his pants. The connection between them had grown stronger over the past few days. Sometimes he saw flashes of information without even touching it, like the artifact was constantly whispering in the back of his mind. It's there. The keystone is sure of it. First vault, oldest one. It's called the Vault of Echoes. Comforting name, Rachel muttered from the engineering station. She'd practically moved into the engine room, treating the Velora technology like it was the most fascinating puzzle in the universe. Which, Jake supposed, it probably was. Everything about this mission sounds like the setup for a horror movie. The Torvan guards stood silently at their posts, weapons ready. There were 8 of them now, led by Commander Varen, a veteran soldier who'd fought in the border wars and took his duty to protect the Imperial Scion with deadly seriousness. Jake had tried to tell them to relax, to just treat him like a normal person. They'd stared at him like he'd suggested they fly the ship naked. Approaching the coordinates, the pilot announced. She was human, from the Mars colonies, one of the few crew members who didn't look at Jake like he was either a messiah or a science experiment. Gravitational readings are getting weird. Really weird. The keystone pulsed in Jake's hands, brighter now. The whispers in his mind became clearer, more insistent. Navigation data flooded his thoughts, precise adjustments that no normal human should be able to calculate. Take us 3 degrees starboard. Drop velocity by 40%. There's a gravity well ahead that'll tear us apart if we go straight through. The pilot glanced back at Dr. Grant, who nodded. They'd learned over the past few days that when Jake gave navigation instructions while holding the keystone, you listened. The ship had already avoided 2 catastrophic collisions thanks to his guidance. They threaded through the debris field like a needle through cloth. Massive chunks of planet floated past, some still glowing with residual heat from whatever had destroyed them thousands of years ago. Jake saw structures on some of the larger fragments, cities reduced to ruins, bridges connecting nothing to nothing. There, Jake said, pointing at the view screen. That asteroid. The big one shaped like a crescent moon. It didn't look like much. Just another piece of dead rock tumbling through space. But as they approached, the keystone blazed with golden light, and Jake saw what the sensors couldn't detect. Energy fields woven through the asteroid structure, camouflage systems that had kept this place hidden for millennia, defense networks that were still active, still watching. I'm not reading anything, Rachel said, checking her instruments. It's just rock. Dead rock. Trust me, Jake said. He stood up, the keystone clutched against his chest. We need to dock on the dark side, where that crater is. There's an entrance there. Dr. Grant gave the order. The ship maneuvered carefully, extending a docking tube toward what looked like solid stone. Then, as they got closer, the rock shimmered and disappeared, revealing a perfectly smooth metal surface with geometric patterns etched into it. An airlock, ancient but still functional, waiting for them. Okay, that's creepy, Rachel breathed. They suited up in the airlock. Jake, Dr. Grant, Rachel, and 4 Torvan guards. Commander Varen insisted on coming personally, his hand never far from his weapon. The docking tube connected with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Lights flickered on in the vault entrance, responding to their presence, or maybe responding to Jake. The interior was pristine. No dust, no decay, like it had been sealed yesterday instead of 3,000 years ago. Smooth walls curved away into darkness, then illuminated as they walked, strips of bioluminescent material activating in sequence. The air was breathable, the temperature comfortable. Whoever built this place had designed it to last forever. This is incredible, Dr. Grant whispered, running her scanner over everything. The preservation technology alone is beyond anything we can do. And it's still working. After all this time, it's still working perfectly. They walked for what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes. The corridor opened into a vast chamber, easily the size of a football stadium, with a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadow. And everywhere, covering every surface, were holographic projectors. Jake stepped into the center of the room, and they all activated at once. Images exploded into existence around them. Not static images, but scenes, moments in time captured and preserved. Jake saw cities of such beauty they made him want to cry. He saw beings that looked almost human but not quite, moving through their lives. Children playing in parks made of living crystal. Scientists working on equations that floated in the air like solid objects. Artists creating sculptures that defied physics. Families gathering for meals, laughing, loving, living. The Velora. This was them. This was what they'd been. It's a historical archive, Dr. Grant said, her voice thick with emotion. She was recording everything, her hands shaking. A complete record of their civilization. Jake touched the keystone to a pedestal in the center of the chamber. The images shifted, became more focused. A figure appeared, life-sized, standing right in front of him. It looked almost human, with subtle differences. The eyes were slightly larger, the bone structure more delicate. It wore robes that seemed to be made of light itself. When it spoke, Jake understood every word, even though it wasn't speaking any language that currently existed. If you are seeing this, then our work succeeded. We knew we could not survive what was coming. The harrow would not stop, could not be reasoned with. So we chose another path. We scattered our legacy across the stars, encoded our genetic heritage into species that did not yet exist, and locked away our knowledge until someone worthy could claim it. The figure gestured, and new images appeared. Star maps, genetic diagrams, biological engineering on a scale that made Rachel gasp out loud. We seeded worlds. Guided evolution. Not through force, but through subtle touches across millennia. You who stand here now, you are not merely descended from us. You are what we intended to become. An evolution, an improvement, humanity refined through time and chance and design. Dr. Grant was staring at the displays with wide eyes. They engineered humanity. They created the genetic markers millions of years ago, then let us evolve naturally until we met their criteria. You are the heir we planned for, the hologram continued. But you are not alone. We spread our seeds across many species. The Torvans carry our warrior spirit. The Mindari hold our philosophical depths. Even the Synthesis Collective, in their obsession with perfection, echo our own mistakes. Together, you are stronger than we ever were. Apart, you will fail as we failed. The hologram's expression grew grave. We made a terrible mistake. In our arrogance, we tried to uplift a species that was not ready. We called them the harrow. We tried to bring them into our collective consciousness, to share our knowledge, our power. Instead, we created something that viewed all individual thought as disease. They consumed entire worlds, trying to force unity through assimilation. We could not stop them. We could only hide and hope. Jake felt ice in his stomach. They're still out there, aren't they? The hologram nodded. They sleep in the dark spaces between stars, waiting. And you have awakened them. The Keystone's activation sent a signal. They will come. But you have what we did not. You have diversity. You have individual strength multiplied by cooperation. The vaults contain weapons, yes, but more importantly, they contain understanding. Learn what we learned. Become what we could not. The hologram faded. The chamber fell silent except for the quiet hum of ancient technology still faithfully maintaining this tomb of knowledge. Well, Rachel said into the silence, that's not ominous at all. The galaxy didn't waste time falling apart. Jake watched the news feeds in his quarters aboard the Horizon's Edge, flipping through reports from dozens of worlds. The Torvan ascendancy had fractured down the middle. Half their government was calling him the prophesied heir, the fulfillment of ancient texts they'd been studying for generations. The other half was calling him a fraud, a human trick designed to undermine legitimate Torvan authority. 3 of their colony worlds had already declared independence, citing Jake's legal claim as justification. It was chaos. And it was spreading. Another one, Rachel said, bursting into his room without knocking. She'd given up on formalities about a week ago, around the same time she'd started calling him Jake instead of Imperial Scion. She held up her tablet, showing footage of protests on a synthesis collective world. They're demanding access to the vault data. Saying that knowledge belongs to everyone, not just one person. They're not wrong, Jake muttered. He'd been thinking about this constantly since they left the Vault of Echoes. The historical archives they'd recovered contained medical breakthroughs that could cure diseases affecting billions. Agricultural techniques that could end famines. Energy systems that would make entire planets self-sufficient. And he was sitting on all of it, trying to figure out what to do. Dr. Grant entered behind Rachel, looking exhausted. She'd been in constant communication with the Institute, with various governments, with anyone who'd listen. The Kresh Dominion just issued an ultimatum. Either you renounce all claims to Velcora territories within their space, or they consider it an act of war. I never made any claims, Jake protested. I've been trying to tell everyone I don't want their planets. Doesn't matter what you want. Matters what you represent. Dr. Grant pulled up a star map, showing Kresh space highlighted in red. 90% of their territory was originally Velcora holdings. If the old treaties are enforced, their entire civilization becomes illegal squatters. They've built everything on those worlds for 2,000 years. Their economy, their culture, their identity. They can't just give it up. Commander Varen stood by the door, as always. The Dominion has mobilized 7 battle fleets. Intel suggests they're planning a strike on this ship. They believe if they eliminate you, the Keystone will unbond and the crisis ends. Can they do that? Rachel asked. Just kill him and solve their problem. Legally? No. Practically? Varen's expression was grim. A dead air can't enforce ancient treaties. Jake stood up, pacing the small room. The Keystone sat on his desk, always within reach now. It had become part of his life, like a limb he'd never had before but couldn't imagine living without. What if I just gave them what they wanted? Release the information from the vault freely. No restrictions, no controls. Just put it all out there for everyone. You'd crash the galactic economy overnight, Dr. Grant said bluntly. Pharmaceutical companies would collapse. Energy corporations would go bankrupt. Millions would lose their jobs. And that's before we even consider the military applications. Some of that Velcora technology could level cities. You want to just hand that to anyone who asks. So I keep it locked up and let people suffer? Let kids die from diseases we could cure because I'm worried about corporate profits. I'm not saying that. I'm saying there's no easy answer here. Dr. Grant rubbed her temples. Every choice you make, someone suffers. That's what power means. That's what being the heir actually means. A proximity alarm cut through their conversation. Varen's communicator chirped urgently. He listened for a moment, his face hardening. We have contacts. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. Kresh configuration. They found us. The next few minutes were controlled chaos. Jake was hustled to the bridge, guards surrounding him like a human shield. The view screen showed 6 Kresh destroyers arranging themselves in an attack formation. They were sleek ships, built for speed and aggression, bristling with weapons that could reduce the horizon's edge to scrap metal. They are hailing us, the communications officer reported. Put them through, Jake said before Dr. Grant could object. The view screen shifted to show a Kresh commander. They were insectoid beings, with compound eyes and mandibles that clicked when they spoke. Their translator rendered the sounds into flat, emotionless English. Human designated Jake Morrison. You are in violation of Kresh sovereign space. Surrender the Praetorian Keystone and submit to custody. You have 5 minutes to comply. I'm not in Kresh space, Jake said, checking the navigation display. We're in neutral territory. And I'm not surrendering anything. You exist. That is the violation. Your claim to Velcora heritage threatens the stability of our nation. This cannot be tolerated. The commander's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. 4 minutes. Jake looked at the keystone in his hands, then at the ships surrounding them. He thought about the vault, about the knowledge stored there, about the hologram's warning. The Velcora had failed because they couldn't work together. Because they'd kept things locked away, controlled, restricted. Maybe that was the wrong approach. Broadcast on all frequencies, Jake said suddenly. Every channel, every network. I want everyone in the galaxy to hear this. Jake, what are you doing? Dr. Grant asked. Something human. He waited until the communications officer gave him the thumbs up, indicating they were live. My name is Jake Morrison. 3 weeks ago, I was a janitor. Now apparently I'm the heir to an ancient empire I never asked for. Everyone wants something from me. The Torvans want legitimacy. The Synthesis Collective wants technology. The Kresh want me dead because I threatened their territory. He held up the keystone, letting it catch the light. Here's what I'm offering instead. Free access. The Vault of Echoes contains medical technology that could save billions of lives. Agricultural systems that could end hunger. Clean energy that would make resource wars obsolete. And I'm going to release it. All of it. Not to governments, not to corporations. To everyone. Universities, hospitals, independent researchers. Anyone who wants it. You can't do that, Dr. Grant hissed. Watch me. Jake turned back to the camera. But here's the thing. There are dozens more vaults out there. And I'm the only one who can open them. So if you want access to that knowledge, you're going to have to let me do my job. No attacks, no threats, no political games. I'll visit every vault, catalog everything inside, and release it freely. That's my offer. The Kresh commander's image reappeared on screen. You cannot bribe your way out of this. 3 minutes. I'm not bribing anyone. I'm making you irrelevant. Jake smiled, and it wasn't a particularly nice smile. See, if I die, the keystone unbonds. The vault stays sealed forever. All that knowledge, all that technology, lost. Your enemies will blame you for it. Your own people will blame you for it. Every sick child who could have been cured, every famine that could have been prevented, that's on you. The commander's mandibles stopped clicking. The silence stretched out. You're gambling that we care more about potential benefits than immediate threats, the Kresh finally said. I'm gambling that you're smart enough to see the bigger picture. You want me to renounce claims to Velcora territory? Fine. I renounce them. I don't want your planets. Keep them. Build your civilization. But let me open the vaults. Let me share what's inside. Because there's something else in there. A warning about something called the harrow. And if the Velcora were scared enough to seal themselves away, we should probably pay attention. Another long silence. Then the Kresh ships began to power down their weapons. 2 conditions, the commander said. You will not claim any territory within Kresh space. And any military technology you discover must be disclosed to all governments simultaneously, not released publicly. Deal, Jake said immediately, before Dr. Grant could argue. The Kresh ships broke formation and jumped away. The bridge crew let out a collective breath. Varen looked at Jake with something that might have been respect. Rachel was grinning like a maniac. Dr. Grant pulled Jake aside. Do you have any idea what you just did? You've committed to releasing advanced technology without any safety protocols, any testing, any oversight. Yeah, Jake said. I'm treating people like adults who can make their own decisions. Crazy concept, I know. This is going to cause problems. Massive problems. Probably. But keeping everything locked up was causing problems too. At least this way, we're failing forward. He looked at the keystone, feeling its familiar warmth. The Velcora tried to control everything. Look where it got them. Maybe it's time to try something different. Within hours, Jake's broadcast had been viewed by half the galaxy. Responses flooded in. Some praised him. Some called him reckless. The Synthesis Collective formally requested access to the vault data for verification purposes. 12 independent research institutions pledged support. And from Earth, the human government sent a simple message: we're proud of you. Don't get killed. Jake sat in his quarters that night, staring out at the stars. Rachel had already started working on distributing the vault data, creating open-source databases that anyone could access. Dr. Grant was coordinating with hospitals and universities, trying to bring some order to the chaos. The keystone pulsed softly on his desk. Through their connection, Jake could feel the other vaults calling. Dozens of them, scattered across the galaxy, each containing more knowledge, more power, more responsibility. And somewhere out there, beyond the edge of known space, something ancient was stirring. The Harrow were waking up. And Jake had a feeling that sharing technology and making deals wasn't going to be enough to stop what was coming. But it was a start. A human start. Messy, imperfect, and hopeful. Exactly what the galaxy needed. They came from the darkness between stars, and they were nothing like Jake had imagined. The first warning arrived 3 months after Jake's broadcast, after he'd opened 5 more vaults and released enough technology to keep scientists busy for decades. The deep space monitoring stations at the edge of the galaxy detected something massive moving through the void. Ships, if you could call them that. Organic structures the size of small moons, pulsing with bioluminescent light, moving in perfect synchronized formations. The Harrow had answered the signal. Jake stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, watching the sensor data with a sinking feeling in his stomach. The fleet approaching wasn't just big. It was incomprehensible. Hundreds of vessels, maybe thousands, each one radiating energy signatures that made their instruments scream warnings. Dr. Grant stood beside him, her face pale as she studied the readings. "They're not using conventional propulsion," Rachel said from her station, her usual enthusiasm replaced by barely controlled fear. "They're bending space around themselves, riding gravitational waves we can't even measure properly. The energy requirements should be impossible, but they're doing it anyway." "How long until they reach populated space?" Commander Varen asked. He'd called in every favor, pulled every string, and now had a small fleet of ships from various governments assembled behind them. Torvan cruisers, human destroyers, even a few crash vessels that had grudgingly joined the defense. Old enemies forced to work together by something worse than any of them. 72 hours at their current speed, the navigation officer reported. They're heading straight for the core worlds. Earth, Torvan Prime, the synthesis homeworld. It's like they know exactly where the major populations are. Jake touched the keystone, feeling its familiar warmth. But now there was something else mixed in with the usual whispers of navigation data and vault locations. Fear. The artifact itself was afraid, and that terrified Jake more than anything else. They're not coming to negotiate. The Velora tried that. It didn't work. Then what do they want? Dr. Grant asked. Unity. Their version of it. Jake closed his eyes, letting the keystone show him what it knew. Images flooded his mind. The Harrow as they'd been before the Velora found them, a simple hive species living on a toxic world. The Velcora's attempt to uplift them, to bring them into the galactic community. The horrible transformation that followed when the Harrow misunderstood what consciousness meant. They think individual thought is chaos. A disease. They want to cure it by absorbing everyone into their collective. No more separate minds, no more individual identity. Just one massive consciousness spread across billions of bodies. That's not unity, Rachel said quietly. That's extinction. The first engagement happened at the Frontier Station 7, a mining outpost on the edge of human space. Jake watched the footage later, transmitted by automated systems after everyone there was already gone. The Harrow ships didn't fire weapons. They just got close. Tendrils of organic matter reached out, touched the station's hull, and spread like living infection. Within minutes, the entire structure was covered in pulsing biological material. The miners inside stopped responding to communications. When they appeared on video feeds again, they moved in perfect unison, their eyes blank, speaking in chorus. Resistance is incomplete understanding. Unity is inevitable. Join us and end the suffering of separation. Then the station went dark. They're converting people, Varen said, his voice tight. Not killing them. Converting them. It's worse than killing them, Jake replied. They're still alive in there somewhere, trapped inside that collective consciousness. The Velora archive showed it. Every person the Harrow absorb becomes part of them, but they lose everything that made them individual. No choices, no dreams, no self. Just the collective. 3 more outposts fell in the next 24 hours. The combined fleet engaged the Harrow near the Meridian cluster, and Jake watched from the bridge as conventional warfare proved completely useless. Energy weapons were absorbed and redirected. Kinetic weapons did damage that healed within seconds. Nuclear weapons just made the Harrow ships glow brighter, like they were feeding on the radiation. And worst of all, any ship that got too close became infected. Crews turned against each other as the Harrow's influence spread through their vessels. Within hours, 3 Allied destroyers had joined the enemy fleet, their hulls covered in that spreading biological nightmare. We can't fight them like this, Dr. Grant said. They adapt too quickly. Every attack just teaches them how to counter the next one. Jake had been thinking the same thing. And the keystone had been showing him something, a possibility that terrified him. The final vault. The one the hologram mentioned. It's not filled with weapons. Then what's in it? Varen demanded. The Velora themselves. All of them. They didn't die. They put themselves into stasis, locked their consciousness away, spread it across different species' genetic codes like seeds waiting to sprout. Jake looked around the bridge at the assembled crew. Humans, Torvans, even a Mindari psychic who joined them 2 vaults ago. They're in us. In all of us. Little pieces of what they were, encoded in our DNA, waiting for someone to activate them. Rachel caught on first. You're talking about creating a counter-collective. Using the Velcora's distributed consciousness to fight the Harrow's unified one. Not fight. Match. The hologram said we had what they didn't. Diversity combined with cooperation. Individual minds working together by choice, not force. Jake held up the keystone. But it requires everyone. Every species carrying Velcora markers. Humans, Torvans, Mindari, Synthesis, even some of the Kresh. All of us linking together through this thing. That's insane, Dr. Grant breathed. We don't have the technology to create a psychic network across that many minds. The Velcora did. And they left the instructions in the final vault. Jake pulled up the coordinates. It's at the galactic core. 3 jumps from here. But once I open it and activate the network, there's no going back. Everyone connected will feel everyone else. Every thought, every emotion, every fear and hope. Complete transparency. The bridge fell silent. What Jake was proposing was terrifying in its own way. Not absorption like the Harrow offered, but connection so deep that privacy would become meaningless. At least temporarily. How temporary? Varen asked, reading Jake's thoughts on his face. The archives suggest a few hours. Maybe a day. Long enough to coordinate a defense the Harrow can't adapt to because they've never faced anything like it. Jake looked at each of them. But I need permission. From everyone. From every government, every individual who'd be affected. I'm not forcing this on anyone. The message went out across all channels. Jake explained the plan, the risks, the alternative which was slow absorption into the Harrow collective. He gave people 6 hours to decide, to vote, to choose whether they'd trust him with this. The responses came back faster than expected. Humans voted 78% in favor. The Torvans split along their existing factional lines but ultimately agreed. The Mindari, already comfortable with limited telepathy, voted unanimously yes. Even the Synthesis Collective, after heated debate, authorized their citizens to participate. But it wasn't unanimous. 20% refused. Some on religious grounds, some from fear, some simply because they didn't trust Jake or the Velcora legacy. Jake respected that. He'd made it clear that this was voluntary. Those who didn't want to participate would be protected, kept safe in shielded facilities until the crisis passed. The journey to the galactic core took 36 hours. The Harrow followed, gaining ground with every jump. By the time the horizon's edge reached the final vault, hidden inside a neutron star's accretion disk, the enemy was only hours behind. The vault was different from the others. Larger, more complex, filled with technology that looked more like a cathedral than a storage facility. At the center sat a crystalline chamber large enough to hold thousands of people. But it was empty except for a single pedestal, waiting for the keystone. Jake took a deep breath and placed the artifact on the pedestal. The galaxy exploded inside his mind. Suddenly he was everyone. He felt Rachel's excitement and terror mixed together. Dr. Grant's fierce determination and hidden doubt. Commander Varen's warrior calm and the old grief he carried for soldiers lost in past battles. He felt billions of others, a massive choir of consciousness, each voice distinct but harmonizing into something greater. And woven through all of them, he felt the Velcora. Not as separate beings but as shared memory, shared instinct. They'd scattered themselves across these species, given pieces of their knowledge to humanity's curiosity, their discipline to Torvan honor, their philosophy to Mindari wisdom. They'd made themselves into a symphony instead of a solo performance. The Harrow arrived. Their ships surrounded the vault, organic tendrils reaching out to begin the conversion. But they encountered something they'd never faced before. Not a unified consciousness like their own, but billions of minds moving as one while remaining themselves. It was coordination without control, unity without uniformity. The combined consciousness didn't fight the Harrow with weapons. It fought with something more fundamental. It showed them what they'd lost. What they'd given up when they chose absorption over cooperation. The beauty of disagreement, the strength of diverse perspectives, the joy of individual choice. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Harrow hesitated. Through the network, Jake felt their confusion. They'd been searching for perfect unity, the end of conflict and suffering. But they'd created something hollow, a single voice screaming into the void. What they faced now was something richer, more complex. Individual suffering, yes, but also individual joy. Conflict, but also growth. Pain, but also love. The Harrow weren't destroyed. They couldn't be destroyed, not really. but they were transformed. Faced with a form of unity they couldn't comprehend or consume, they retreated. Not in defeat, but in contemplation. They pulled back beyond the galactic rim, their ships vanishing into the dark between galaxies. Jake felt them go, felt their confusion turning into something that might have been curiosity. Maybe they'd come back someday. Maybe they'd evolved into something new. But for now, they were gone. The network began to dissolve. One by one, the connected minds separated, returning to themselves but carrying memories of the connection. Jake found himself back on the bridge of the horizon's edge, gasping like he'd been holding his breath underwater. Dr. Grant was crying. Rachel was laughing. Commander Varen just nodded once, a gesture of respect between soldiers. Did we win? Rachel asked. We survived, Jake said. That's close enough. The galaxy was changed. People who'd been connected couldn't forget what it felt like to truly understand each other. Conflicts didn't vanish, but they became harder to maintain when you'd felt your enemy's fear and hope as clearly as your own. The technology Jake had released from the vaults began transforming civilizations. Medical miracles became commonplace. Energy crises solved themselves. Famines ended. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. Some corporations collapsed, causing economic chaos. Some governments fell, unable to adapt to the new reality. People struggled with the memories of the connection, the intimacy of having touched billions of other minds. But it was better. Messier than the Velcora's controlled empire, more chaotic than the Harrow's forced unity, but alive in a way neither of them had been. Jake returned to Station Kepler 442 6 months later. They'd offered him positions as ambassador, as counselor, as a dozen other important-sounding titles. He'd turned them all down. Dr. Grant took over as the first galactic coordinator, building bridges between species. Rachel led a research team unlocking the secrets of Velcora engineering. And Jake? Jake went back to being a janitor. Sort of. His cleaning routes now included the vault archives, and he consulted on major decisions when asked. But mostly he mopped floors and emptied trash bins and lived a quiet life. The keystone sat in his apartment, glowing softly. Sometimes late at night, he'd touch it and feel the echo of that vast connection, all those minds working together. It reminded him that being human wasn't about being perfect or powerful. It was about choosing to reach out, to connect, to help even when it was hard. And that, Jake thought as he finished mopping the artifact chamber floor, was a legacy worth keeping. Retry.